Wraiths, Ron Spaceman's first annual is under the review and glass today. This was released in 1982 and is the first of 4 annuals that Ron Spaceman received at Mar-Vell. I would consider this one the most interesting one because it brings in 2 other people to contribute ideas or writing to the Ron Spaceman mythology. We have art by Broderick Kingsley. I have wanted to talk about Broderick Kingsley for a while. He is an undersung talent, but it took this long because I couldn't think of what to call him. And the obvious choice was Matthew Broderick. But I already have made enough references to Matthew Broderick in Defenders comics. And I don't want the world to think I am obsessed with the guy from the Inspector Gadget film. You probably know Broderick Kingsley's art. I will talk about him and his career a lot more when I review the fill-in issue I have of Captain Marbles, the real one, Mar-Vell. I think Broderick Kingsley is a good fit for Ron Spaceman. He is obviously no John Buscema. Heck, he's not even his brother, Sal Buscema. But Broderick Kingsley always seemed tied to cosmic books or books with armoured heroes, and Ron Spaceman is both of those things. For this, we have an all-new bad guy. He is called Turangar. That is his name. But his code name is Stardust, which is less cool sounding than Turangar. He is, or he was, a member of an alien race that were a bodiless collective. He was exiled for what they call unmutual acts. We don't learn any more what they were. Turangar is banished out and forever forced into existing in a humanoid sort of shape by small quantum bonds that contain and constrict his energy into that form. Very convoluted biological setup for a new character. But one thing that struck me immediately was that this backstory is very familiar. They've been expelled by the hive mind alien collective and forced into an unnatural form as punishment. This is exactly what happened with Nebulos, the Nebula Man, from the Defenders, verbatim. It is the exact same backstory. Then I thought on it for a bit longer, and I realised that that was only really focused on as the backstory for Nebulos, the Nebula Man, in the Avengers annual that he was in. The Avengers annual that came out the same year as this Ron Spaceman annual. The Avengers annual that was edited by the same person that receives a co-plot credit for this Ron Spaceman annual. Marky Mark J. He is the person in question. Forgot to establish that up top. He gets some co-plotting credit here, and he is not an editor on this, so it is strictly co-plotting. he came up with an idea. I would guess his idea is Turingar. We will come to why, besides that it is the exact same idea as in an Avengers annual he edited that year. Turingar, in his new form, comes to Earth, and he meets some children playing baseball. And then Turingar, he kidnaps the children to drain their life energy. Turingar he's not set up or explained adequately enough to really understand at any point in this annual. Prior to this, you did not suspect he would be an energy leech, and you didn't expect him to be a child catcher either. But maybe that is why he was banished from his race. That night, the townspeople and Ron Spaceman, they go looking for their missing children. And the people, they don't really trust Ron Spaceman. They are accepting his help because he has offered it. And they vaguely have heard about Ron Spaceman in the news. But he is still an unknown to them. He is an alien. If you are curious, this annual is placed right after issue 32 of the regular series in the omnibus. That is the issue with Rouge. And I say nothing to contradict that placement. So, this energy alien, Turingar, he is sucking off children in a cave. Absolutely vile. I would kick him out of my alien race too for doing stuff like this. And then Ron Spaceman interrupts and saves the children before they are sucked off to death. But the townspeople predictably think that Ron is the one who did this to them. All they have seen is Ron come out of a cave with half-dead, sucked-off children. And among this mob of people are some imposters from among us, the Dire Straits, and they use it as a chance to get people to distrust Ron Spaceman and to cover for themselves. After causing people to attack Ron, one of the Dire Straits slinks off like a little weasel. He transforms into a bat and flies away. Flying weasel. But he flies straight into Turingar, who is looking for more life forms to suck off. This is our first real look at Turingar. Those bands around him, they are like a physical prison that is forcing his energy into the shape of a body. Now, despite what the introduction to the omnibus says about Turingar, aka Stardust, never appearing ever again, he does. He is in a couple of issues of Kazar, Marky Mark G's Kazar, likely because Turingar was Marky Mark G's idea. After this, Turingar was kidnapped by Santa Claus and kept among several cosmically powered prisoners that Santa Claus was intrigued by. They were set loose by Dr. Bedlam. We got to see Turingar fight Kazar, and try to suck off his magic bracelets. Shall we get into my theory? Marky Mark G was trying to get a Kazar series off the ground for most of the 80s. I reckon Turangar was an idea he came up with for a Kazar nemesis, but then he offered it to Ron Spaceman because his Kazar thing wasn't happening. But then about a decade later, he did get to close the loop a tiny bit. There is another reason I suspect this, and that is the design. If you have ever seen Marky Mark's designs for Kazar, the ones that never made it to print, or one that was only in the deluxe edition of the Andy books, they are often like this, over-designed. They have all these awkward shapes or design elements, like these bands on Turangar, or in Kazar's case, it was always the little nubs from his magic bracelets. Marky Mark would put them absolutely anywhere he could on Kazar's body. What happens here is that Turangar finds that the dire straits are much better to suck off than small children. So he locates a secret enclave of them and sucks them all off. Really setting the bar high for comedy in this video, aren't I? Now, one of the great things I immediately thought was that this is an interesting dilemma to put Ron Spaceman in. He is facing an enemy, Turangar, who could carry out his mission for him. Very good conflict for a character. We have one of the dire straits. They have escaped Turangar, and they beg Ron Spaceman to zap them with his neutralizer rather than let Turangar suck them off. The idea is that Turangar is mercilessly killing them, whereas Ron Spaceman, he is their enemy, but he is noble and honourable. This annual is broken up into chapters, and I want to say, I don't like annuals. It is a big statement coming from YouTube's leading expert on SeaWorld attacks, but I find annuals to be a pain in the arse most of the time. For every truly great annual out there, there's about 20 shit ones that only break up the flow of the regular series and often don't even reflect the ongoing story arcs or continuity of the main series. The other thing is, and this is bad, this looks bad for me. Annuals, they take ages to read. I don't mind reading an annual if I am enjoying it, and this one has some good ideas in it, but even this, I got to this point and I went, okay, I'll read the rest later on. This could have been 2 issues of the series. They have already broken it up into 4 sections. So this section is Ron versus Turangar. Now, wrong with that. Well, one thing wrong with it actually. Much like I said at the start, the extent of Turangar, his powers, have not been established, so he is only now displaying certain abilities. And we don't do that much with the internal conflict either. I guess Ron Spaceman is too noble and honourable to even consider the possibility of letting Turangar exterminate the Dire Straits. Turangar, Stardust, he has never had a handy book profile either. Again, that was a lead-in for a cutaway, but I have nothing to cut away to. Here is Ron Spaceman's entry from the original series of handy books. I need to remember to stop setting up cutaways like that. We do have some nice Broderick Kingsley art. Ron, he defeats Turangar by destroying the bands that gave him his form. And then Ron uses Turangar's powers to unsuck off all the small children. The end is a bit of a cop-out. Ron takes Turangar free from his body prison into space and just tells him to not return to Earth. He is then caught by Santa Claus off-panel and somehow re-outfitted with the exact same cosmic shackles. After this, we have a backup story written by Mark Spector. I thought I would talk about the other people who wrote Ron Spaceman, because there aren't many. We have Mark Spector here doing this backup story. We had Marky Mark G in the main story. And I thought I could have a little quiz here. Can you name the other writer who wrote Ron Spaceman? I don't mean David Peter that time he had him out of his armour. I don't mean any of the licensed dodging sort of shenanigans. I mean, there were 4 writers who wrote Ron Spaceman officially in his heyday as a licensed Mar-Vell character. Bill Bungalow obviously wrote his entire series. Marky Mark J and Mark Spector, they had credits in this annual. And also technically wrote him a second time in Conquest of Champagne. But there is a 4th writer who also wrote a comic with Ron Spaceman at Mar-Vell in the early 80s. Can you name the writer? I would offer a prize to whoever names them first. But what I have discovered is it is a pain to mail away prizes, and nobody wants them anyway. And then the IRS will think that you have done a 10 grand transaction without declaring it in your tax returns. My point being, it is nice to see another writer tackle Ron Spaceman, even if just for a backup feature in an annual. This is alright. There's good ideas in there, but I don't think they are explored to the degree that some of them deserve. It's completely okay. It's nice to see Ron Spaceman fight a more generic supervillain like this, I'll be honest and give this 7 thumbs up.